Hello, welcome to Video Mania 2. I'm the dude manning the counter, Duncan, and today we're going to talk about my favorite franchise, 007, James Bond. I'm going to go over 5 James Bond movies, and it's going to be my favorite ones from each actor that has portrayed this iconic role, and I'm going to go through them, explain it, and I'm kind of winging it here because I'm just going to try to speak from the heart because James Bond is just my favorite one, and I'm going to end it talking a little bit about No Time to Die, which I haven't seen yet. I don't know when I'll get a chance to see it. I got a lot of work ahead of me, and I'm trying to put the house back together because I just got it painted. So, a lot on the plate, but I am going to talk about James Bond today. And the first one I'm going to talk about is Goldfinger, starring Sean Connery. And this was his third outing in the role, and it was after Dr. No and From Russia with Love, so Sean Connery is very comfortable with the role now, and Goldfinger has many of the iconic James Bond moments, and, he took on a henchman called Odd Job who throws a top hat that can slice people up. That's where that came from. If you ever saw Austin Powers and wondered where that kind of came from, that's where it was a spoof of that. But he takes on a guy named Eric Goldfinger who's looking to take over. He's looking to poison the world's gold supply in Fort Knox. It's one of those big plots. And James Bond, holds a, he kind of charms his way into one of the women that works for Goldfinger, to try to help foil this plot. And it really James Bond in how he takes on a pretty evil guy, but he does it with kind of a smirk and with a certain panache, and makes it look easy, even though he's always in danger. So, and Sean Connery, obviously he made this role what it, such an iconic one, to have, the hard edge when needed, but also to have the humor and to, have that smoothness and sophistication that's needed for this role. It's a tough character to play. And Sean Connery established the rules for James Bond. And Goldfinger is a great movie, and, there's many things that have been parodied over the years. It's just so many iconic moments. So, it's my favorite of Sean Connery's, I believe. The next one, Roger Moore took over in 1973 with Live and Let Die. But Roger Moore, as with this character, sometimes it takes a while to get the footing. He did Live and Let Die, and then he did The Man with the Golden Gun. And The Man with the Golden Gun, well, pretty entertaining, was pretty campy too. So what they did with is they were like, those were a little more grounded. And so this was, at the time, it came out in 1977. This is The Spy Who Loved Me. This is the movie that got me into the James Bond franchise. When they used to run them on TBS all the time, I saw it and was just blown away. And then I just became a James Bond fanatic after that. But Roger Moore, this was his third outing, and he was very comfortable in the role, and he brought his, he brought some seriousness, but it was a different time, late 70s, early 80s, things were campier, so he was perfect for that time. And, he brought a little bit of tongue-in-cheek humor, but he could be serious when he needed to be. And The Spy Who Loved Me was, at the time, one of the biggest productions ever. I mean, they built a massive sound stage. And I remember when I was watching it with my friend, when it was run on TBS, I remember the main villain, Stromberg, he had this underwater fortress. I mean, this fortress that would come up. It was like this giant thing. It was like, wow. And then, 1977, you had to get creative. There wasn't all that CGI, so it has many iconic moments. There's a Lotus that's also a submarine, and with all kinds of gadgets. This movie was an epic scale. I mean, it was huge. And and that's when people really were like, okay, Roger Moore is a great Bond, too. He's my favorite, by the way. But, we all have our preferences. It's very subjective. But this may be my favorite Bond movie ever because it got me into it. And Roger Moore really hit his stride with this. And Barbara Bach plays Anya Amasova. She's a Russian agent, and she has some personal stakes in this whole thing, too. And Stromberg, played by Kurt Jurgens, is obsessed with underwater, and he's looking to end the world and build a world beneath it in the sea. So, you know, it's a giant thing, and James Bond has to save the world, but it's really, really cool. I love it. The next one, Roger Moore made several more films, and in 1985, after A View to a Kill, he stepped down from the James Bond role. And so they brought in someone, you know, different, because Roger Moore was a lighter tone than Sean Connery. And, you know, it was the later 80s, you know, but the 80s were still in full swing, so there was still some camp and stuff. But, you know, Roger Moore had his way, so they brought in Timothy Dalton. And his License to Kill, by the way. He came in first for The Living Daylights, and he was much harder edge than Roger Moore or Sean Connery was. I mean, he had some humor, but he was much more serious and, you know, grizzled, I think it would be the right word. He was very serious. I mean, kind of a sneer in a way, you know, in a good way, though. And he was really good. Now, Living Daylights was a solid adventure, had some pretty cool things. But, you know, James Bond, I think, is one of those things you have to get comfortable with the role. And Timothy Dalton made it his own, and this is a great movie. License to Kill. He takes on a Colombian drug lord played by Robert Davi, who was a villain of the 80s. He was awesome. And this one was a little different, too. It had a score by Michael Kamen, who did a lot of Joel Silver 80s movies. So if it sounds kind of like Lethal Weapon or Roadhouse, that's why. You kind of hear some instruments, and you're like, am I watching a Joel Silver movie? Well, Michael Caine was the reason for that. But this movie is 80s in a lot of ways, but it has a harder edge that's set as a precursor to later spy movies that, you know, do that more serious hard edge. And License to Kill has some amazing stunts, and of course James Bond, you know, no CGI, you know, like they took an 18-wheeler, like a gas tanker, and they, you know, managed to get it to balance up, you know, on one side, you know, to dodge a missile, of course. You know, it was just crazy. But License to Kill is really, really good. I recommend it. This one, you know, some people say, does a movie hold up? This one really does. So it's really good. Then, and don't laugh here, okay, the James Bond franchise had some legal rights issues, and License to Kill didn't perform as well as previous Bonds, so, you know, and there was rights issues. So I remember when I got in James Bond in 92, there had been no James Bond for 3 years, and there was no telling when it would happen. And, you know, the producers had to get the rights issues sorted out. And the guys who started James Bond is Albert Cubby Broccoli. His daughter runs the franchise now. And, you know, he produced all of them. He chose who would play James Bond. You know, he died. And so, but his choice at one time was Pierce Brosnan. So in 1995, there had been no Bond for 6 years. They brought in Pierce Brosnan, who was originally going to take over for Roger Moore, but he was on a TV show called Remington Steele that was going to get canceled. So like, all right, he'll be free to do James Bond. And then Remington Steele, everybody started watching Remington Steele because they wanted to see who the next James Bond was. And then the ratings went up and they decided to renew it. So Pierce Brosnan was stuck. So it actually kind of worked in his favor, though, because he matured a little more, and James Bond's a more mature character. You know, he's like late 30s, early 40s. And so in 1995, after long years of waiting, we got a treasure, Goldeneye. And I never got it on DVD or Blu-ray or 4K, or if it's on 4K. I need to pick it up. I just never got around to it. This still works, by the way. So in my bedroom sometimes, you know, if I feel like watching Goldeneye, I still got a VCR that works. So I pop it in there. Or if it streams, I'll watch it downstairs because different streaming services have it. You know, I'll watch it from time to time. It absolutely has awesome stunts. Pierce Brosnan nails the role. You know, he adds his own little twist to it, you know, his own little thing, but he believes in James Bond, and he had the physicality and the smoothness and sophistication to do it. And Goldeneye was a return of James Bond. It was a huge hit, and it spawned a video game on Nintendo 64 that was iconic in its own right. You know, I played that in the college dorm many times. So Goldeneye really brought James Bond back to the forefront into the 90s, and you could tell by the reception and the box office that he was missed. You know, this iconic character, and, you know, here he takes on a former 00 agent who's gone rogue, played by Sean Bean, so there's some emotional stakes. Just a great movie. Of course, all the set pieces and stunts you expect from James Bond is there. So even without Albert Broccoli, you know, it showed that, you know, it was in good hands and it had a bright future. Now, Pierce Brosnan went on to do 3 more films, all which I liked, by the way. Some people aren't as wild about them, but I like Pierce Brosnan's role. And then after Die Another Day, which I did like, by the way, he was kind of over the top and got pretty ludicrous. And Pierce Brosnan was 49 at the time, so it was time to step away. So, again, James Bond, the franchise, was going to return. They just weren't sure when or how or who was going to play him. And I remember, I was like, I had, you know, we all do our casting choice, who I had in mind and stuff like that. And then when they announced, there was a rumor that Daniel Craig would be the front runner, and he turned out getting the part. And I remember I wasn't wild about it, but I wanted to keep an open mind. And this is when the internet was starting to pick up too, and there was some big backlash, and people were like, he's blonde, and he looks bland, and could he do this? And the only thing I really knew him from was Road to Perdition and the first Tomb Raider. And I liked him okay, you know, good actor, but I just was not sure. But I wanted to keep an open mind, and then I heard they were going to kind of reboot it, but they were keeping Judi Dench's M. So I was like, okay, it's an interesting thing. But then I saw the trailer in summer of '06. I'm like, all right, the trailer looks pretty damn good. So, you know, I was kind of on board. And then I went opening night in November of '06, and Daniel Craig, after over a year of backlash and naysayers saying he couldn't do it, it happened. He shut everyone up. And I remember, God bless him, Roger Moore, before, you know, people had even seen Casino Royale. Roger Moore is like, look, give him a chance. You know, this role has a lot of scrutiny. Let's watch the movie first. You know, the James Bond team, Eon Productions, has been doing this forever, okay? Chill out. Let's see what he can do. And Daniel Craig delivered in a way that was relevant to the times, but he still had the physicality, but he brought a grit, like not even like Timothy Dalton, you know, had a harder edge. This was harder than anything I've ever seen, because the Bourne Identity took the spy thriller and took it to a gritty level, you know, with like closed-in fights, you know, just all kinds of different stuff. And Daniel Craig, the opening sequence, how serious he was and how rough around the edges he was. You're like, this is a different Bond. But wow, I remember that night. I was blown away by it. And I was like, okay, Daniel Craig is James Bond for sure. And everybody, all the backlash went away like that. And there was like, yeah, Daniel Craig is for real. And this was the first one without Albert Broccoli picking the James Bond, and they nailed it. And he's still doing the role, but you know, he's about to do his final role. So Casino Royale had the stunts and the big plot, but the Daniel Craig ones kind of have an arc to them. So it's going to close out with No Time to Die. Now, there's been some controversy around No Time to Die. I'm going to do another thing here. I'm going to wait and see how it turns out, because, you know, I'm hoping it should be great. I'm sure it will be. And I will be there as soon as I can, you know, schedule permitting. But I'm going to be in the theater, I promise you, because I want to see how it wraps up with Daniel Craig. And I'm curious who will take over for this iconic role. I have some people in mind. I'll throw a few out there. Obviously, Henry Cavill, I think, would be perfect. And he actually auditioned for Casino Royale, but he was like 21, 22 at the time, you know, a little bit young for the part. And Daniel Craig was like 36, I think, something like that. So, you know, a little more age appropriate for that role. But here it is. Those are my 5 James Bond movies. From each of the actors are my favorite. Daniel Craig, yeah, I'm kind of sad to see him go, but I'm excited to see who they bring in. And so Anyway, I'm going to check out No Time to Die. I will review it for the channel. And thanks for sticking with me this long. I'm just kind of winging it here. So, what are some of your favorite James Bond movies? Who do you think should take over the role? Are you going to see No Time to Die? Let me know all this in the comments. And I'll see you next time. I'm going to be going over some horror movies very soon. I got 2 movies that take place in October that I'm going to talk about, and then it's going to be horror for the rest of the month. So it'll be a lot of fun, a lot of great stuff coming. So thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.